In the words of our founder, Nancy Dershaw, next generations of Holocaust survivors has as our mission to engage our authentic voices to support those impacted by the exposure to trauma.
The most important thing to any child is being loved. But there are still things that I think any survivor, any child of a survivor, still maintains with them.
We were normal kids. My parents did everything to give us a good life. We were the most important things to them. They wanted us to be educated. They wanted us to have what they didn't have.
We are committed to keeping their legacies and memories alive and to decrease the multi-generational transmission of trauma.
Unlike some other children of survivors who grew up in communities where there were many people who had accents and many survivors, I felt very alone and very different. But I think it was at that time that I just knew something terrible had happened in my life and in their life.
I had tremendous fear when we were in the Holocaust Shambra because I was basically taken away from my mother. Years after the war, when I heard sirens, I got scared. I got scared when I saw airplanes. Every person is different. Some people don't react to it at all, and some people react to it with a great deal of trauma.
I was in my room. It was the first time I had my own room. And I would sleep at night wondering if the Germans came, where would I hide? My mother came from a very small town, and they had a fairly happy life, but there was anti-Semitism even then. My mother would tell me when she went to school, they would yell out, dirty Jew or go home Jew. And even in the class, if a Jewish child did something wrong, the teacher would hit them with a ruler on their hands, but not the other children.
I ran home to my mother, crying. I was 4 years old, and we were living in tenements, and there was a little girl across the street that was able to receive a little bicycle, and I went over to play with her, and I sat on her bicycle, and her mother came out of the house and saw me on her bicycle, her daughter's bicycle, and she slapped me. And my mother went with me to the woman, and the woman shouted at my mother, "Hitler should have killed you like he killed the other Jews."
My mother, basically all of her life, was afraid. All she wanted to do was be safe. That was her goal in everything that she did. And it was the same goal that she had for me. She had bad dreams. She was always afraid that the Nazis were coming to get her. Up until that time, she rarely talked about it, but she was having a real tough time in her later years.
I had an unusual relationship with my mother because at times I was her mother. She never had a mother, nor did she ever have a childhood. The war broke out, and she was just a young girl, and she never had an opportunity to have any fanciful experiences. So therefore, she lived very much vicariously through me.
The way we fulfill our mission is to create awareness and educate students of all ages about the lessons of the Holocaust, raise money for Holocaust survivors with needs, offer support services to those who were children during the Holocaust and the children of Holocaust survivors.
There were two men sitting opposite each other, and they had a K on their hand, and the one looks at the other and he says, "You were there?" He said, "Yes." They were in the same bunk together. And when you see something like that happen, it changes your whole perspective.
They help needy Holocaust survivors, and that's extremely important to me because I learned that there are still thousands of Holocaust survivors, and many of them are in desperate need.
I'm always crying when I get the reports that this one needed a toilet and he didn't have the money, and this one needed a refrigerator, and this one didn't have the money for his car insurance, so they wanted to help him pay for it, because if he didn't have transportation, he'd have to find somebody to take him, and he doesn't have money. So there's all these little stories. So whether it's a toilet or whether it's new teeth or hearing aids, and then after 5 years you hear that this person for the first time can hear, well, you know you have to keep doing this. You just have to keep doing this.
I got involved in Next Generations approximately 10 years ago, and at first it was just to meet other people who may have had similar experiences. And I really had never sought out people whose background was similar to mine.
They really spend a great deal of time educating school children about the Holocaust and what it meant and how it interrelated with bullying and hatred. And to me, that is a very important lesson that school children learn.
I felt like an immediate kinship, and just being able to tell stories about our parents, stories about how we grew up, and it was just incredible that we had like an automatic kinship, like we felt like we had known each other for years.
We work in different ways to educate people, not just who we are and what we do, but the impact of the Holocaust on future genocides and what's happening in the world.
And if we don't continue that conversation and give it to the third generation, it's going to just disappear.
Unfortunately, the survivors will be passing on, and the students are young. And in order to say this is not going to happen again, you need the enthusiasm and the wisdom of these children. I hate to say children, these students, and their ability to play forward what they heard so that hopefully it may not happen again.
Support in any way that you can, whether it be joining as a member or whether it be involvement in volunteering in some way, or certainly financial support, because realistically this organization is made up primarily of 99% volunteers. Quite candidly, they work their butts off to get things done, and it's important. And if you feel it's important, as I do, we ask for your support.
Thank you to all who have contributed to making sure we never forget, and to those whose legacies must live on.